Hello and welcome to Just a Moment. My name is Kristen Harding. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to continue the Baron Trump novels. It's the Baron Trump novels and The Last President by Ingersoll Lockwood. And so far, we have just gone on such an adventure. And that's what this story seems to be, almost like a child's story, maybe told by a teacher or read in chapters in class. I'm not sure. But to me, it's an adventure. And so many people were wondering what on earth, because what are the odds of there being a Baron Trump and in 2025 his father's president? And it says, and the last president. Now, this is just a story, and as always, all of my videos are for entertainment purposes only. So, happy Thursday. What uh what a year this week has been. Anybody else feeling that? Because I have really come full circle in energy from feeling very, very happy to very, very sad and back up again and down again and back up again and down again. And I really have to shout out to Michelle Espinoza, because if I hadn't had a warning that this was going to be an up and down week, oh my goodness. So thank you, my dear. Everybody, if you get a minute, she's on Saturday night. It's 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern, and I think 7 p.m. on the West Coast, if I did my math right. But yeah, give her a listen, because what she tells us for free is scary accurate. So I'm seeing a few people are here. I hope you will give me a comment or two, positive, of course. Uh, and let me know if you can hear me, because I noticed in the last video that it was a little up and down, I guess would be the right word. You could hear me and then you couldn't. And also, if any of the words you don't understand, let me know, because my my husband said, "You know I love you, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I don't understand that book." And I said, "Well, that's because it's written in a language that has been just about forgotten. That really flowery, beautiful, descriptive language that we used to always employ. And now, I don't know if it's because of texts or just being always in a hurry, but we've lost some of that beauty. So I'm bringing it back. And just so you know, I have not read this novel. I do not know what happens. If there are words that are politically incorrect now, I do apologize. Um, I will certainly make an effort not to say anything that would be not politically correct, but I didn't write the book. So we are still in the middle of a chapter, actually. And as last I remember it, to sum it up, the little Baron was on his boat, and he figured out a way to get out of these three treacherous uh, obstacles that were preventing him from continuing on his journey, because he wanted to get going. So, right about now, as I understand it, let's see, yeah, the first point is gained. I cried out, "I have found the channel." So he got out of what he thought was the first obstacle. And then, right where it looks like all is well, and it says, "We have crossed the basin of the port, no man's port. Its dreaded quicksands swirl and roll in vain. It was not fated that they should engulf the little barren ship. But see, the channel narrows, the waters grow black and troubled, and hark, didn't you hear that dull roar? I spring down, and I pass among my men, and drop here and there a word of encouragement. My perfect calmness Calmness impresses them. No, Mary, aye, sir, goes up, but I see a response in their faces. It is, we trust you, little captain. Speak. The dull roar grows louder and louder. The rapids catch us up and bear us along like chips on the foaming tide of a mountainside stream. Our staunch vessels rock like a toy boat. The coaster, lashed to one side, creaks and groans in its efforts to break away. Calling Bulger to me, I pass the line around him and lash him firmly to the mainmast, for I was fearful lest a sudden lurch might hurl him overboard. On and on we speed through the frightened waters. The roar is deafening. I glance at my men. Their bronzed faces are blanched. They cling to their shrouds and stays, their eyes riveted upon me. Look, the fearful whirlpool is dead ahead of us. It opens its foam-flecked jaws like some terrible monster. We leap into its very mouth. Are we lost? How can it be otherwise? As if our staunch vessel were a nutshell, the swirling, raging, whirling, battling, boiling waters. Catch her up in their encircling arms, lift her high above the sea level, turn her completely around, and drop her with such terrific force that great walls of water rise on all sides and threaten to engulf the frail wooden thing. But most wondrous change, mark how she floats upon a glassy pool. The foam dances in the sunlight on the rippling waves. All is peace, where but a moment before nature raged with a demonic fury. Quick as I thought, quick as a thought, I leap into the mizzen shrouds, cut away the jury masts. They fall overboard with a crash. My men work with a mad earnestness. They know too well that every instant may be their last. Our mainsail, already hoisted, is sheeted home without a word or a cry. We are too near death to sing. See, see, the wind feels the great sail, and we move. The waters seem to scent our escape. They are awakening to new fury. A deep rumble from the very bowels of the earth calls upon them to arouse them from their lethargy. They reach out for us. Too late, too late. We sweep out of their reach. We are saved. We are saved. A shout goes up from 20, which I believe is 24, from which fear we now take her head. From which fear we now take her hand. Look back. As if robbed of its prey, the whirlpool awakes with redoubled fury. 100 arm-like streams of water gush forth and pour around our good ship in vain effort to draw her back into that terrible vortex. We are drenched with clouds of spray and mist as we slowly but steadily keep on our course. Would that we were safe upon the swelling tide of the open sea, for there is still another danger to be met. Our channel suddenly narrows. I could toss a biscuit to the rocky wall, which shuts us in on both sides. Again, a deep silence falls upon ship and crew, broken only by a strange sound of rushing waters, bursting out and dying away regularly as the swing of a pendulum. Ah, 'tis Thor's hammer, beating the frightened waters into foam as it sways from side to side. In spite of my effort to appear calm, I can feel my heart beat faster. A cold chill benumbs my hands. A glance ahead startles me like a blow from an unseen hand. There, with the morning sun resting on its hammer-shaped crest, swings that dreaded shaft of flinty rock, threatening instant destruction to any ship bold enough to attempt to pass it. In accordance with my orders, every sail on the coaster had been set, and her helm lashed so as to pass to the right of Thor's hammer. "Courage, men!" I cried. "Stand by all! Cut away the lashings! Cast off the tender!" Then waving my hand to the skipper, our mainsail came down with a run. Everything worked like a charm. Our ship slowed up, while the coaster shot ahead to her destruction. See how gallantly the doomed craft speeds on her way, for the breeze had freshened, and several gay streamers and flags which my men had run up on the topmast fluttered in the crisp morning air. There, did you not hear that crash? Thor's hammer has struck her. Blow follows blow. Crash, crash, crash. Now is our time, or never. I was not caught napping. The moment we were clear of the coaster, I had ordered sails enough to be set to hold our steady course. Already we drew near Thor's hammer, which is fast battering the coaster into a shapeless mass. The sea is filled with bits of plank and broken timber. Thor's hammer bends to its dread work of destruction, unmindful of our presence. What could withstand this terrible fury? Those sturdy timbers yield like twigs. Another minute and we have the monster and his victim in our wake. Now we are passing him. Our sails tremble from the very force of his breath. Our deck is strewn with splinters. The roar and the crash are deafening. Thor's hammer bends for one last blow at the ribs and the keel of its broken, disjointed victim. Hurrah! Our good ship dips to the deep roll of the ocean's breath. We are on the open sea. Port No Man's Port, farewell. As my men looked back on the rocky gateway and the grim sentinel of Port No Man's Port, they tossed their caps into the air and sent up cheer after cheer. Bulger bounded about the deck, doing his best by most vigorously barking to testify his admiration for his little master. The sailing master drew near, and touching his cap and scratching the deck with the toe of his shoe, he cried out gaily, "Bravo, little Baron! That was splendidly done. I was sure we would never get through the shifting sands, and then we passed them. I was ready to swear the whirlpool would make short work of us, but when we sailed safely out of that, I drew near the tail, ready to jump overboard, for I felt that nothing could save us from a blow from Thor's hammer. I've grown wrinkled and gray facing the storms of Neptune's domain, but I never felt I had a master until now." I nodded and smiled and quickly turned the conversation to some other topic. "By the way, skipper," I said, "remember the very moment we clear the English Channel, turn her head southward." "Aye, aye, little Baron," was the reply. Calling Bulger to me, I now went below. I wanted to be alone. The fact of the matter is I needed rest. The terrible strain on my nerves, caused by the hopes and fears of the past few days, began to tell on me. Throwing myself upon a canopy, I fell into a deep sleep from which I was awakened by Bulger's whining and crying. The sailing master was anxiously feeling my pulse. I had slept 3 days and 3 nights. All this time Bulger had absolutely refused to leave my side or partake of food, although the skipper had tempted him with the daintiest of morsels. His joys knew no bounds as I sprang and shook myself into shape. "Where are we, master?" I cried. On the broad Atlantic, headed dead south, little Baron, was the answer. Good. Send me a rasher of bacon and some hardtack. The Atlantic breeze has given me an appetite, and Skipper, I added, a little broiled fowl, which is a chicken, for Bulger. Hello, David. And now for the land of warmth and sunshine, I murmured. Now for the home of the orange and the palm. Cold winds like me not. How about this again? Cold winds, there we go, like me not. I am a child of the tropics, born in a land where nature works and man plays. No chill blast ever whistled its sad tune over my cradle. Let those who will spend 1 hour Let those who will spend one half of their lives waiting for Mother Earth to wake from her winter sleep freeze the body and you freeze the brain. I can relate to that. I am of those who love flowers better than snowflakes. Glorious Southland, I greet thee. Thy child comes again to thy arms. Oh, take him up kindly and lovingly. Southward, ever southward, my good ship sped along. By day I paced the deck to watch the dolphins play, or observe Bulger's amazement when a stray flying fish fell fluttering on the deck. By night, with my eyes fixed upon the blazing Southern Cross, I longed for the time to come when I should set foot upon some beautiful strand decked out with coral branch and shells of pearl, in whose limpid waters golden fish nestle mid sea plants of not less brilliant hue. It was now 3 weeks since the last murmur of Thor's hammer had fallen upon our ears. My chronometer marked high noon. Every sail was set, and our good ship careened as gracefully as a swallow that bent in its flight to touch the cool waters of some glassy lake. All of a sudden the wind fell. Our ship stood still on the motionless sea. My pennant hung like a string. There was not air enough to lift the smoke from our galley fire. A strange, mysterious stillness waited upon the ship and sea. I knew too well what it betokened. One of those dreaded calms, more feared by the seaman than the buffeting gale, had overtaken us. Our ship stood like one moored to a marble wharf. And as the thought flashed across my mind that days, aye, even weeks might pass, ere the winds would lift themselves again to bear us on our way, a feeling of utter listlessness came over me. It required a great exertion for me to throw it off. I dared not let my men see aught of discouragement in my face. And yet it was a hard task. Had I not been made of stern stuff, I would have wept to see my progress stayed at the very moment victory was almost within my grasp. Again, as was with the case when the terrors of Port No Man's Port rose, like demons of malignant might, to shut me forever in that rock-encircled basin, did my thoughts revert to home, to the elder Baron and his gracious consort, my dear mother, to the servants and the retainers of the baronial hall, to the villagers and tenantry. How, oh how, should I be able to face them all, if I were forced to return home with the humiliating confession that my voyage had been a failure? Bulger was the first to catch a glimpse of the shadow on my brow. He turned his dark lustrous eyes full upon me so pleadingly, as if to say, "Oh, little master, What aileth thee? May I not do aught to drive the dark melancholy? Oh my goodness, even for me this is hard. May I not do aught to drive the dark melancholy from thy face? Thou knowest how I love thee. Basically, the dog is saying, what can I do to cheer you up? Hmm. Teach me to help thee. My life is thine. Thy grief weighs like lead upon my heart. Speak to me, little master. Tenderly and lovingly I stroked his head and spoke in softest tones to him. He was rejoiced, but still he sat and watched me, for it was impossible to deceive him by feigning to be light-hearted and unconcerned. The second week found us lying like a log in a mill pond, our sails unvisited by the faintest breath of air, the sea sunken into a sleep that seemed like death. Despair sat on the faces of my men. Rouse thee, little baron, I murmured to myself as I paced my cabin floor. Where is thy boasted cunning? Where is thy vaunted wisdom? Nevermore say that thou art a man of projects, quick to devise and quick to perform. Thou hast lost thy hold on the spoke of the fortune's wheel. Thinkest thou so? Cried I, in answer to my own thoughts. Follow me, and we shall see. With a bound, I cleared the gangway. How about I cleared the gangway? That sounds better. The sailing master lay asleep on the deck. The men, in groups here and there, looked the very picture of despair. Rousing the skipper with a vigorous tug at his belt, aided by Bulger's frantic outbursts of barking, I called out, Avast there, skipper! Asleep from overwork? Pipe all hands on deck. The men came in lively fashion, greatly amused by my cut at the sailing master, who stood rubbing his eyes, half dazed by my sudden outburst. Send me the ship's carpenter, I continued, and catching up a piece of chalk, I drew the plan of a large box or chest as nearly as long as our ship's breadth of beam, and gave the carpenter directions to build it of strongest planks to be held on board. He and his assistants were soon at work. Turning then to the cook, I ordered him to kill the pigs and fowls we had shipped for our own supply of fresh meat, bidding him to be careful and not to lose a drop of the blood. These orders fairly drove my men wild with curiosity. How are we doing? I think I have a little more time before the break. I'm gonna sip on my coffee though. Even my cup says today is a good day. Oh, so much better. Where was I? Okay. The long box. Let's see. We'll just start at the top of the page. Yep, these orders fairly drove the men crazy with curiosity. The sailing master drew near and attempted to get some explanation from me, but in vain. I was too deep in thought to speak. The long box was ready in a few hours. Word now went up that I was about to abandon the ship and strive to reach land by rowing, and that this long box was to hold the provisions. The sailing master again fixed his gaze inquiringly upon me. I pretended not to notice his beseeching looks. The cook by this time had the fresh meat in readiness. Under my directions, it was all transferred to the long chest, the blood poured out over it, and the box securely closed with a heavy plate glass lid made up of several pieces shipped for the purpose of restoring broken lights. By this time, the men had grown so excited over this mysterious box and its still more mysterious contents that I was obliged to order them to fall back so that the carpenter and his assistants might go on with their work without interruption. The next step was to weight the long chest with lead and to attach hoisting tackle to each end by strong iron rings. When all was ready, I called out to my men to stand by and to lower it over the stern rail. Stationed so that I could watch the lowering of the long box, I was careful to sink it about 3 feet under water and then lash it firmly to the ship's stern. I had scarcely given the word to lower away on all sails when the ship began to move. The effect on my men was indescribable. Some turned pale and stood as if transfixed with fear. Others laughed in a wild, maniacal way. Others, who had their wits about them, rushed to the stern to fathom the mystery. A glance was enough. It was a simple thing, after all. Gradually the others recovered their reason, and hastened to join their companions, and gaze down the waters, where I had lashed the long box with its glass lid and strange contents. Meanwhile our good ship moved faster and faster through the sluggish, listless waters. A ringing cheer, 3 times repeated, went up when the mystery was fully solved. Mystery? Hear then what this mystery consisted of. In the first days of this dead calm, which settled like a terrible blanket spread over us by the hands of some unseen monster to check our advance, I had noticed that the waters swarmed with sharks of extraordinary length, and that these fierce demons of the deep hung about our vessel in shoals of countless numbers, attracted by the garbage thrown overboard, and doubtless, too, by the odor of the many living things on board the ship. When at times a particularly large supply of garbage fell into the water, so fierce was the onslaught of these ravenous monsters that they actually jarred the ship as they struck against its side or stern, locked together like advancing cohorts of trained soldiery. Upon this hint I acted. If, as I reasoned, I can only control this now wild force, why may I not make use of it to rescue my ship from a worse danger than a raging storm? For far better would it be to face the howling blast and foam-crested wave than to perish from thirst, chained to the open sea by this breathless calm. Now, however, all was changed. Are we close? Oh, we are. Perfect timing, and I have a perfect spot to start up again in about 5 minutes. And I will see you after the break.
Looking for breathtaking photography that speaks for itself? Whether it's the raw beauty of nature, the sleek professionalism of corporate imagery, or the infinite wonders of the sky, Donovan Pudoka captures it all. With over 10 years of experience, Donovan's lens doesn't just take pictures, it tells stories. His work is perfect for travel publications, corporate branding, artistic prints, or anyone who appreciates stunning photography. If you need high-quality images that elevate your project, Donovan Pudoka delivers. Have we sparked your interest in Donovan's work? Check it out at matrixminds/Pudoka. My eye promises you, you will not be disappointed.
Welcome to Crystal Cove and Mystic Charms, where magic meets the mundane and the extraordinary becomes everyday. Are you ready to gift yourself with the whispers of ancient power stones? To the feel and hear the echoes of our ancient past? Dive into a world where each pendant tells a story, where rare stones hold secrets known only to the universe itself. At Crystal Cove, our collection isn't just jewelry. It's a gateway to a realm of mysticism and wonder. Let the shimmering opal guide you through twilight dreams, or embrace the fiery energy of the sun with our exquisite amber pendants. Each piece, handcrafted by the hands of a true mystic who understand the language of the earth and the fire of one's heart. At Crystal Cove and Mystic Charms, we believe that every soul deserves to sparkle. Whether you seek solace in the calming embrace of amethyst or wish to dance with the vibrant hues of turquoise, our collection holds the key to unlocking your inner magic if you allow it to be so. Visit us today and discover the pendant that speaks to your soul. Crystal Cove and Mystic Charms, where the beauty of our amazing earthy realm meets the magic of the cosmos.
Hey there, Hunter. Go check out our friends at Colorado Custom Game Calls. They are all about creating a high-quality, custom, unique game calls at an affordable price. They are here for hunters that can't and won't pay upwards of $180 to $200 per game call. They pride themselves on giving their customers the opportunity to not only purchase an affordable and high-quality call, but to customize their game call to their liking. So listen up and go check them out. That's www.coloradocustomgamecalls.com. They got calls for all type of game, and all the game calls can be custom made to your own likeness. That's www.coloradocustomgamecalls.com. Tell them Matthew sent you from the Matrix Minds.
What is up, all my beautiful and gorgeous souls? I am Michelle Espinosa, otherwise known as the Shaman, through the Matrix Mind Media. So tell me, how many times have you wished that you had that special power of prediction? You know, to know what was going to happen before it actually happened and took place. To have some power and control over that situation before things came flying at you out of left field. The thing is, you actually can have that power. You can be aware of what's coming. Tune in to Astrology TV with me for Breaking the Cage every Sunday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Matrix Mind Media. And I will go through the astrology and help put you on the right course and get you back in control of your own life. Love you guys.
This CBD fluid is a whole flower fluid extracted from the cannabis flower. We don't use any heat, butane, or chemicals when we extract, so we get all of the components of the plant. All the CBD, CBG, CBA, all the terpenes, all the flavonoids. This allows our body to absorb at 60 to 90% rather than the average of 6 to 10% absorption you would get with a CBD oil. Because our bodies are made up of mostly water and this is a fluid, it's highly absorbable so that you're getting 500% more nutraceuticals per dose. We also have this available in our CBD spray as well as a muscle rub with all kinds of botanicals. You're going to absolutely love it.
Check it out, Brainiacs. MatrixMinds.live/CBD. CBD I use. Feel free again. Feel alive again.
And we're back. The show is Just a Moment. The book is The Barron Trump Novels and the Last President by Ingersoll Lockwood. And I do that, by the way, just to comply with Facebook's rules. Compliance. All right, where was I? Oh, yes. Now, however, all was changed. On and on our good ship went, with ever-increasing speed, gliding noiselessly and swiftly through the mirror-like waters. My device worked far better than I had dared to dream, for as the fresh blood began to trickle through the crevices of the long box, the ravenous sea monsters were almost maddened by its smell and taste. The largest and fiercest pressed forward in a series of attacks, tossing their smaller companions high in the air. As they took up their places, with wild and eager search for the prey which lured them on, ever so near them and still ever beyond their reach. No sooner did the foremost ranks of this army of okay, Myrmidons, myrmidons of the deep show deep signs of fatigue. Then long lines of fresh and eager recruits darted forward, hurling their exhausted fellows right and left, like bits of cork, and took up the task of following the ever retreating prey, which, although giving out its life blood and plainly visible to them, yet seemed to know no tiring, and sped onward and ever onward before the wild, tumultuous attack of their pushing, plunging cohorts. The moon now shone like a plate of burnished silver on the blue walls of heaven, and the deep silence of the sleeping waters was broken by the splash of those mighty bodies, glistening in her light, as they toiled and struggled to urge our vessel on its way. I could not sleep. Wrapped in a woolen cloak to shield me from the insidious dews of the tropics, more likely mosquitoes. Did I say that out loud? I threw myself on deck, with Bulger's head pillowed upon my lap. Something whispered to me that if those hunger-stricken marauders of the deep would only keep to their task till morning, and the sun streaked the east, my cheek would feel the breath of coming winds. And so it turned out. With the first glimmer of daylight, I caught sight of a ripple on the lake like blossom on the ocean. At that very moment, I noticed that our ship was slowing up. I sprang off the taffrail. Lo, our allies had abandoned us. Not a single follower of that riotous camp was in sight. Ah, little did they dream how they had saved our ship and crew. How limitless is man's selfishness. The beasts of the field, the monsters of the deep, must minister to his pleasure and obey his commands. I had pointed out the ripple in the water, and when the first sturdy breath of wind reached us, we were in readiness to receive it. Every sail was set. My heart leaped with joy as our ship drew up the wind, obeying her helm like a thing of life. And that was the way I saved my ship and crew from a worse danger than a storm-lashed billows. From this time on, all went well. Scarcely a week had gone by when I was startled by a cry which sounded sweeter to my ears than the voice of a monarch to a courtier. Land ho! Dead ahead! Seizing my glass, I sprang up into the main shrouds and turned my gaze in the direction indicated. Aye, it was true. There it lay before us, rising from the ocean with gentle slope, its heights crowned with trees of many-colored foliage, its shores ending in long stretches of the snow-white beach. Above the unknown land hung a purple mist of a deep, rich tint, like the cheek of a ripe plum. As we drew near, a landlocked harbor seemed to welcome us. Not a sound or a sign of life, however, came to break the deep repose which enveloped the bay and the shore. Slowly and in stately bearing, our good ship sailed into the harbor and cast anchor. The radiant beauty of the land now burst upon me. 10,000 shells of pearly tints and hues glistened on the white sand, while in the limpid waters the sea flowers and foliage of deepest crimson swayed gently with the tide. Upon the sloping banks, nature seemed to be holding high carnival. No shrub or bush or tree was content to wear simple green. Each waved some blossom of richest radiance in the soft and balmy air. Here and there a brooklet came tumbling down the hillside, rippling, purling, and splashing over the moss-grown rocks in its bed. The air was heavy with the fragrance of this vast garden so beautiful, and yet so silent and deserted. The next day, leaving my sailing master in command, I set out a tramp, accompanied solely by my faithful Bulger. My idea was to see if this island, for such I thought it to be, contained anything quaint and curious. The further I advanced into the interior of this fair land of bright flowers, purling brooks, clear skies, and perfumed air, the more I was astonished to find that neither vine, shrub, brush, nor tree bore any berry or fruit to feed upon, and though it was just as though it was just a land of brooks, flowers, and balmy air, as some dweller of the faraway north might dream about. Yet was it untrodden by the foot of man? For rare indeed is that which the people of the tropics are willing to prepare any other food for themselves than which nature spreads before them. I now began to be thankful that I had supplied myself plentifully with dried fruits before leaving my ship to set out for a tour of the island, for such it seemed to me to be. At this moment, I need another sip of coffee. At this moment, Bulger halted and raising his nose, excuse me again, and raising his nose in the air, sniffed hard and long, and then fixed his dark eyes on me, as much as to say, "Take care, little master. Some sort of living creatures are approaching." I had hardly time to draw one of my pistols and give a hasty glance at its priming, when with strange cries and stranger movements, a dozen or more beings of the human species sprang out of the thicket with noiseless steps and surrounded us. I raised the firearm, which I held grasped in my right hand, ready to stop the advance of this band of most curious creatures. By slaying their leader, for judging by the foreboding aspect of their faces and the terrible condition of their bodies, apparently reduced by the dread pangs of hunger to mere sacks of skin hanging on their frames of bone, which methought rattled at every step they took, I anticipated an instant attempt on their part to strike us down and eat us. But I was very quickly reassured. First, by the fact that they bore no weapons of any kind, and second, by the softness of their voices and the walking beam like motions of their bodies, which I interpreted to mean a sort of welcome, mingled with a desire to make friends with a human being so different from themselves. Although I gave them to understand, or tried to do so, by imitating the ducking motion of their heads, followed by an attempt to equal their performance in making a large number of very low bows, so graceful and easy that they would have done credit to a French dancing master, that they had nothing to fear, yet they continued to back away from me as fast as I advanced. Bulger was somewhat surprised at my eagerness to make friends with such a starved-looking set of creatures, and kept up a furious growling, eyeing them suspiciously as they continued the walking beam motion of their bodies, all the while backing away from me. I now found myself in front of a group of umbrella-shaped bamboo huts, into which most of them had retreated. With no little difficulty was it that I finally succeeded in coaxing them forth and convincing them that my intentions were perfectly peaceful. For a quarter of an hour or more they circled about me in silent wonder, while I, on my part, gazed in speechless astonishment at these extraordinary looking specimens of our race. What they thought of me you will learn as my story goes on, but how shall I ever describe them to you so as to give you even a faint idea of their wonderful appearance? Imagine skeletons of a rather small stature walking about with collapsed meal bags hung upon them, skin hanging down in folds everywhere, flapping about at every step, and you'll have some faint conception of the utterly strange and grotesque look of these beings. Almost every bone in their bodies was visible beneath this thin covering. Their cheeks hung like two empty pouches on each side of their faces. Their noses stuck out like knife blades. Deep wrinkles and creases crossed and crisscrossed their faces, giving them a look of terrible melancholy and utter wretchedness. With their skeleton fingers and with their skeleton fingers ever and anon they grasped a fold of skin and smoothed it out, or pushed it elsewhere as one might a loosely fitting garment. And yet, utterly wretched and melancholy as these creatures seemed to be to the eye of the looker on, their voices were light and gay and soft as flute notes. They chatted and laughed among themselves, were full of mischief, and pointed their pencil fingers at different parts of Bulger's and my body with evident enjoyment at the sight of things so new and strange to them. Several times, while gazing upon these mournful and woe-begone looking faces, and at the same time listening to their happy and childlike chatter, I broke into a peal of laughter, which was not only very ill-bred, but which invariably had the effect of causing them to fall back in disorder. Gradually, however, they grew bolder, and by means of a kind of sign language gave me to understand that they desired to touch me. By recourse to the same common language of mankind, I informed them that I should be only too happy to gratify their request, and proceeded to lay bare my breast (he opened his shirt) and roll up the sleeves of my coat. They half repented of their foolhardiness and crowding laughter, interlocked their arms and legs in such a manner that, to save my life, I couldn't tell where one commenced and the other ended. But after a few minutes' coaxing, I succeeded in persuading them to advance and lay their hands upon me. Loud outcries followed exclamations of wonder and astonishment. As I afterwards learned, the words that they uttered meant lump, chunk, stone, hard, solid. At this moment, feeling a little bit hungry, I opened my sack of dried fruit and thrust several pieces into my mouth. And now came a still more furious outburst of wonder, mingled with cries of horror and disgust. Again they retreated and tied themselves into a knot. Can it be, I asked myself, that these creatures never touch solid food? Observing now that they were consulting among themselves as to what course to pursue in regard to me, and being afraid that they might take it into their heads to escape into the thicket, for they were as quick in their movements as sprites and phantoms, I lost no time in making them understand that I desired to be led into the presence of their king or ruler. This seemed to please them, but with many ducking of their heads, they withdrew a short distance and held a sort of powwow. After which, one of their number, who seemed to be a sort of leader among them, and whose name, as I afterward learned, was Go Whiz, advanced toward me with numerous low bendings of his body, and succeeded in informing me that their chief lived at a great distance from where we were, and that it would be necessary for me to remain here while they returned to their ruler to ask permission to conduct me to him. I readily consented to make such an arrangement. Go-Wiz then led me to one of their dwellings, pointed out a bed of nice dry rushes, and invited me to make myself comfortable until he should come again to conduct me into the presence of their chief, Zitwish Zitwish, as was the name he bore. Bulger and I didn't wait for a second bidding, for we were tired to the bone after our long tramp. With half a dozen or more bows, quite as low as those made by Go-Wiz and his companions, I began to make ready for a night's rest. For a moment or so, I stood watching the retreating figures of these extraordinary people who, in single file, swiftly and noiselessly, like so many phantoms, had flitted away from the spot. Then, throwing myself down on the bed of rushes, called out to Bulger to lie down beside me. But he was not so trustful as I, and after caressing my hands took up his position at the door of the dwelling, so as to save his little master from any treachery on the part of the phantom people. Day now went out suddenly, like a lamp quenched by the wind. Bulger refused to sleep, but I, sheltered from the night dews by this thickly thatched roof, soon fell into a deep and refreshing sleep, out of which Bulger found it difficult to rouse me, for I have faint recollection of having felt him scratching at my arm for several moments ere I could shake it off the fetters of sleep which held me bound so tightly. Sitting up hastily, I discovered that Bulger was patrolling the floor in a state of great excitement, pausing ever and anon to sniff the morning air, which it was plain to be seen brought him a warning of some kind. Instantly it occurred to me that wild beasts were prowling about in the neighborhood. I examined the priming of my firearms. Bulger looked well pleased to see that I was thoroughly roused to the threatening danger. And now he grew bolder, and springing out in the open air made a circuit of the dwelling, only to return with bristling hair and growling out his suspicion that all was just not right. His ever-increasing anxiety now began to cause me genuine alarm. I was upon that very point of making a hasty retreat to my vessel, when the thought flashed through my mind, what, escape these swift-footed phantoms? If it were it were idle to attempt it. So I determined to take my chances, come what might. The hut was strongly built, and its roof would at least protect us from a flight of poisoned arrows. While I was occupied in making a hasty survey of the place, a loud outcry from Bulger startled me. I gave one look, and a shiver of fear zigzagged through my body. An armed band was in full sight. With fierce shouts, deep and rumbling, they came nearer and nearer. Their massive forms swayed from side to side. Their huge limbs moved like walking oaks. Their arms seemed the sturdy branches ending in hands. In the dim moonlight, they took on the shape of gnarled and knotted knobs. Terrific strength was shadowed forth by their broad and heavy shoulders. One blow from a hand of a sledge-hammer weight would lay a frail creature like me helpless in the dust. Bulger, brave as he was, quailed at the sight. In an instant I collected my thoughts and breathed a last good-bye to the elder Baron and to the gentle Baroness, my mother, in their far-away home beneath the northern skies. Now they had reached the very doorway and stood beating their huge chests, giving forth deep rumbling sounds. Instinctively I unsheathed my poniard and brandished it in the air. The effect was astounding. With terrific cries, groans, and shouts, they fell back in the wildest terror, rolling over each other, bounding asunder like gigantic footballs, striking the earth and bounding into an erect position. When at last these human airbags settled down into something like rest, one of their number broke out into the most plaintive and beseeching speech, which I afterward learned had about the following meaning: "O Master, O Magician, O mysterious lump, O impenetrable chunk, put away that dread instrument, prick us not with its awful point, pierce not our delicate skins. The slightest touch from that frightful blade would cause our bodies to burst like pricked balloons. Fear us not, we are thy friends. We come to conduct thee to our great chief, Zitwish. I am Go Wiz, thy slave." Suddenly the truth broke in upon my wondering mind. There was no falsehood in the speaker's words. It was Go Wiz. The others were his companions, the wretched woebegone bags of bones who had parted with me only days before. With a smile and a gentle wave of the hand, I hastily returned my dagger to its sheath and gave Go Wiz to understand that he had nothing to fear from me. Half crazed with curiosity, I now advanced to get a closer look at Go Wiz and his companions. Sober fact is it when I tell you that they were, man for man, the same beings I first fell in with on my starting out to explore the island. But this wonderful change, you ask, how had they, in one short night, grown to such Herculean build, arms and limbs as massive as those of Japanese wrestlers? I reply, it was all air. For when I met these gentlemen, they had not dined. Now they had just come from a hearty meal. For you must know that I was now in the land of the wonderful wind eaters. When the air is calm and the winds asleep, these curious people are obliged to fast, and their skins hang in wrinkled bags, as I have described. But when the wind starts up for a mad frolic, or even a gentle puff and blow, these strange creatures at once begin to increase in size, and not long is it before every wrinkle and crease disappears like magic. I think that's a pretty good place to stop. We're almost at the top of the hour. So thank you everybody so much for joining me on this wonderful day before Valentine's Day. I hope that your significant other showers you with a lot of attention, if nothing else. I hope you enjoy your evening, and I will see you on the next show. So that is all for now, dear lights. Thank you so much for joining us. Never forget that you are amazing. You are loved. Be well, be safe out there, and I'll see you on the next show. Bye.